Kathy, what was the difference back then when you were working at Epic in regards to uh, the various hats that a rep had to wear working in the black music division versus your pop counterparts?
Right. Well, first of all, we'll start at the top by saying the pop department always had the most money. They had the most resources to draw from, and I mean, I'm not trying to take away from them because they definitely did their work. My pop counterpart, bless her soul, Shelley Morey, she's deceased now. I mean, she had like triple the stations I had, but she also had a lot of help. She had a lot of help working with her stations. Um, I had to do more grassroots stuff for sure. With the black music, you always have to do more. You always have to do grassroots. I mean, it's not ever gonna just pop up and just be like, oh, here's this act. It's always grassroots for us. So back then, we had to call retail stores to get sales reports because they didn't have SoundScan. We had to call radio stations to do tracking every week because they didn't have BBS. Um, and then you had to, of course, call all the stations in your market. You had to visit stations in your market. You had to set up interviews with everybody in the market, not only with radio, but also we set up interviews with, like, well, because I worked Chicago in the Midwest, I had Jet Magazine, Ebony, the Chicago Defender, Earl Calloway certainly gave me carte blanche. I mean, I could bring anybody over there to interview with him. So you had outlets like, these black outlets that you had to go to. DJ Fink had, his video show. So anything that we could really find, we took and drug these artists around everywhere, as opposed to maybe the artist coming to one spot and everybody coming there
Right.
and doing, yeah. Sometimes that would happen, but more than ever, I drug everybody around.
So even now, do you find that even in your role being the national for RCA inspiration on the promotions and radio side, do you find that you have challenges now that a lot of those outlets, such as retail stores, have kind of pretty much dissipated?
Yeah, well, the challenge now in in 2017 is completely different from what it was in the 90s. I mean, there's not even any comparison. How this music industry has evolved over the last 5 years really has just been mind boggling. Right now, we're looking at Spotify, we're looking at Vivo, all these different digital outlets. Everything now is streaming. Streaming is, to break a record now, they put it on the streaming and see where it goes from there. And then you could take that to radio and say, hey, this is what's happening. I know that back in the day, everything was clubs, and that was another thing. We had to go to clubs every night. Um, and a lot of records would break out of club play. And because I don't work urban music anymore, I can't really speak to if clubs are still breaking records. Maybe they are. Honestly, I don't know. But on the gospel side, you know, it's really more, it's getting into streaming because the gospel listener is not really into streaming music as much as the millennials are. But we break a lot. I mean, we churches.
Hmm.
We take a lot of our artists to churches to minister.
That's your club, quite honestly,
That's our
when
club.
you're dealing with inspirational and gospel and
Yeah,
traditional gospel music,
yeah.
is the churches. How important are churches when it comes to getting the message out there without isolating your secular crowd that's also into gospel music?
Um, First of all, there's so many levels of churches that you could take artists to. You have your mega churches. You have your mid churches that are not, you know, they don't have 50,000 members, but they have, you know, 10,000. Then you have your smaller churches that have 5,000, 4,000. And then you have, you know, your street, you know what I'm saying, little churches on
The storefronts.
storefront churches, exactly. And they do have, what's the word I'm looking for? Like we used to have the Jack the Rapper. Okay, they're conventions.
Yeah.
They do have some conventions that you could take them to. But it's just different. I mean, you have to get it kind of in the right churches that have a younger listening audience. You know, it's just something you have to learn and grow. And not just churches. I mean, a lot of the radio stations do praise in the parks or do, you know, summer fest events. So getting your artists on those helps to expose them as well. But then again, you know, you still need to do interviews. You still need to do newspapers. I mean, and the biggest thing, I think this is answering your question. One of the biggest things now is social media. Where is their social media? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. How many followers do they have? YouTube. If they post videos, how many, you know, people are actually looking at these videos? And that's really, for gospel too, that's be huge for any genre.
Well, let's rewind because you have gone from Epic and you went into doing some independent work as well, but you also entered the radio broadcast side with Reach Media, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
I did a little. I wasn't on the air, but yeah, I have done a little bit of everything. And I just want to say, when I was at Epic doing all that for 11 years, you know, traveling, the whole Midwest, radio, retail, whatever, everything, I was taking care of my parents. So for 12 years. So doing all that, it was really a lot. That was a lot, you know, to do that. And that taught me something too about family. You know, family is really everything. But getting back to your question, I did radio, I did records, and then Deborah Hannah, Snoopy. Yeah, Snoopy got me. I owe my whole gospel career really to her, because she's the one that dragged me into gospel. She, Jamila Muhammad told her, you ought to get Cathy to help you. She's really good at working records. She just cusses too much. You got to stop her from cussing. So Snoopy stopped me from cussing so much. But I worked for Snoopy literally for a year. And then I got a call from one of my friends who worked for Tom Joyner's company in Dallas. And she said, we need an affiliate relations person for these gospel shows. And, you know, I know you and I know how hard you work. And since you've been working gospel, you know all the program directors. So it's kind of perfect. It's a perfect job for you. And basically, you would be selling syndicated radio shows to different stations. So I worked the radio syndication one, gospel shows like Yolanda Adams. At the time, it was Cocoa Brother, you know, those shows. And that was a really good learning experience, because my boss, Gary Bernstein, taught me a lot about sales and how to push and not, you know, be too obnoxious, but, you know, push. And I got to meet a lot of, spoke with general managers, owners, you know, and some operations managers, but really it's the owners who would put on the shows. And I learned about Arbitron ratings and just a lot. It was a lot to learn, but it was a great lesson for me. I hated Dallas, but you know, when I came back, I, you know, did independent work, and then I got a call from E1 from Phil Thornton, and I started working for them. Worked for them for 2 years as a on retainer, and then he went to RCA, and then he brought me over.